It's hard to put into words this hike through Pondo Land, which took us from Port Edward, starting at the Wild Coast Sun and ending at Mbotyi, just 30 kilometers from Port St. John's, taking us 4 days with 75 kilometers traveled. This coastline and route is a magnificent hidden gem for hikers that has made its way to the top of my hiking to-do list. From towering waterfalls and freshwater swimming pools, historical shipwrecks, tropical beaches, and meandering rivers, this journey is filled with history, diversity, and incredible culture. The area has been inhabited by humans for thousands of years, and there is evidence of early Stone Age settlements dating back to over 100,000 years. Not only that, but this route has itself been hiked since the early 19th century, where the first European settlers arrived in this area. In the early 20th century, the trail became popular with hikers, and it has been a popular hiking destination ever since. This was by far one of the most scenic hikes I've ever done, and during our 4 days we only passed one group of hikers. When it comes to hiking this section of the Wild Coast, there is an option for anyone wanting to do it, whether you wanting to slack pack on a fully guided and catered for trip, all the way down to backpacking unsupported. Because there were just 2 of us and we had limited time to complete this trail, a guided tour wasn't an option, leaving me with no other option than to do this hike and the organization of it on our own, planning our own accommodation along the route and gathering all the info we needed to make it possible. We started our self-organized trip off with a guide for day 1, from the Wild Coast Sun to Mbotyi Lodge. The Pondo Land coastline is scattered with camps that were once used by the British during the colonial rule. From what I can find, the Mbotyi camp was originally built by the British Army in 1876 during the 9th Frontier War. The war was fought between the British and the Xhosa people, and the camp was used as a base of operations for the British forces. The camp was abandoned in the early 1900s, and then it fell into ruins. Then in 1990s, the lodge was restored and now brings in an income for the community around it. The lodge is situated on the Mbotyi River, a beautiful natural landscape surrounded by forests, rolling hills and waterfalls further upstream that you can visit via canoe. Day 2 was just under 15 kilometers long, leaving Mbotyi Lodge towards the Mbotyi River. It starts off with a ferry trip at Mbotyi River, which you pay a small fee to get across with a ferryman. At this point, you will notice that river crossings are a fairly big consideration on this hike. My recommendation is that if you're going to do this hike unassisted, be aware that some rivers will need to be swum across with all your gear, or you might be lucky and there may be a ferryman who will take you across for a small fee. I would attempt crossing these rivers at low tide wherever possible, so plan your days around the tides when you can. This won't be something you'll have to worry about if you're going on a guided trip, as the guide will know if a ferry is needed and will call one beforehand to assist. Our day from Mbotyi to Mbotyi was 100% over the Mbotyi Nature Reserve. On this route, we found a beached whale that was unable to be saved, rotting in the sun, a shipwreck, and then a welcome sight of the Mbotyi Falls. Just up from the Mbotyi Falls, if you follow the river, you'll find Standloper Falls, which has a big jump from a cave above, but we did not get this footage on camera. From there, we hiked 2 to 3 kilometers where we reached Gwegwe, which was once rondavels and then ruins. These ruins have now been demolished and new accommodation is being built in their place. There are murmurs from the local guides that once built, the owner of this accommodation wants to stop hikers from hiking through their soon-to-be fancy oasis. This would be disastrous for the Pondo people, and I have no doubt that this issue will be figured out since this trail gives back so much to the community along it. From there, we made our way towards the Mbotyi River, but around 1 kilometer from it, we ventured inland northwesterly in the Mbotyi Game Reserve, where we stayed in a colonial house for the night. This was where we learned that Mbotyi used to be a leper colony from 1922. At the time, there was no cure for leprosy, and it was feared that people with the disease could spread it to others. The leper colony was a self-sufficient community with its own hospital, school, church, and farms. Later, once leprosy was cured, the colony was closed down, and the land then was declared a nature reserve. Here we stayed in the main doctor's house, which has now been converted into accommodation. On day 3, we hiked just under 12 kilometers from Mbotyi to Port Grosvenor. From the doctor's house down to the Msakaba River required a bit of bushwhacking, but we made our way onto the sand in about 30 minutes. From there, we were able to walk across the Msakaba River due to us crossing at low tide. This, however, is yet another river you need to be ferried across. However, be prepared to swim if you don't cross at low tide and no ferryman is available. Just over the Msakaba River is another beach camp at Msakaba that used to be fully open to anyone who wished to stay there. But recently, this camp has been taken over by what seems to be the biggest guiding hiking company that hikes this route, and they will not let hikers who are not hiking with them stay at these locations. This includes Lupanta and Manteku beach camps further down the coast. For some that I speak to, they feel the single group is attempting to monopolize the Pondo Land hiking trail, and I can understand why. I myself felt this way when I was refused accommodation when they found out we were hiking solo. But I also understand that this group does a lot of good for the community and has brought people back to this trail, exposing people to this incredible coastline, and for that I am grateful. I also feel this group will be the ones that get behind the community to keep this coastline as untouched as possible, and I believe that this group will be the ones that will fight to keep the Mbotyi Nature Reserve open for hikers to hike through it. I just hope that they fight for all hikers, including solo travelers like ourselves and local guides. This day was gentle, with some amazing swimming opportunities as you walked through this remote landscape. That evening, we stayed at Lambazi Lodge, which was a quaint and remote lodge in Port Grosvenor, with everything you need and honestly set up so nicely. Port Grosvenor gained its name from the shipwreck Grosvenor, which was shipwrecked in the area with an incredible story of how greed can ultimately destroy. The wreck of Grosvenor occurred on the 4th of August in 1782. 123 people survived the shipwreck, but many of them died from disease and exposure in the days that followed. Only 18 survivors reached Cape Town. Other survivors are believed to have joined the local tribes. Some believe Bessie was one of them. Bessie was a white girl that was adopted by the Pondo clan following a shipwreck that cast her upon the South African shores. She was about 7 years old when she was shipwrecked, and later she became more beautiful and was married to the chief, becoming the queen of the land. Day 4 from Port Grosvenor to Mbotyi was a 25-kilometer day for us, but it was also the most incredible part of this hike. I wish I could explain to you how magnificent this day was. With an early start, we were treated with an incredible sunrise as we navigated through the Pondo Land grasslands, and we were finally introduced to a school of dolphins very close to shore. The excitement continued to build throughout the day, and we reached Waterfall Bluff, a truly spectacular sight, a waterfall that towers down straight into the ocean below. There are only 19 places in the world where this can be seen, and Waterfall Bluff is one of them, hidden away off the beaten track, to be seen by very few, and only the few that put the effort in to seek it. But our day had only just begun. Even after Waterfall Bluff, coming across Cathedral Rock, I was in awe of this towering rock formation. The views from the top looking down onto Cathedral Rock are truly spectacular, and it's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. In addition to its natural beauty, I was struck with the realization that as we sat looking over this incredible natural wonder, all to ourselves with no soul in sight, there were thousands elsewhere looking at man-made tourist attractions. And at that very moment, I felt blessed beyond what I could ever describe. After this, we were mesmerized with secluded beaches that stretched for kilometers, and we were finally met by cows on the beach, a unique and iconic sight on the wild coast. Finally, we ended our hike off at the Mbotyi lodge, where luckily for us, the only couple who were staying at the lodge with us were driving past the Wild Coast Sun the next day and were happy to give us a lift back to our vehicle. There are multiple ways to hike the Pondo Land. Either you can take a slack packing option, which is fully catered for with accommodation, or you can use a local guide, which are also fully catered for, but you carry your own gear and stay in the homelands. Either one of these two options I would highly recommend. Alternatively, you can do what we did and book out accommodation along the way and go self-guided. But remember, this is going to be an adventure that you'll have to navigate alone, and a lot of research and planning is needed. However you decide on hiking this route, I hope that it is always open to everyone who wishes to traverse it, no matter how they wish to, and that everyone from landowners, tour operators, local guides, and the hiking community all work together to do what they can to keep this incredible coastline the way it is today and open to all without attempting to block others from traversing it. Currently, the Wild Coast is one of the most isolated areas of South Africa, and because it's so remote and difficult to get to, it's untouched and in pristine condition, making it a hidden gem for every hiker that needs to discover it. I'm so incredibly blessed and grateful that I got to hike this vast coastline filled with history and natural beauty, and I can't wait to hear that you were able to do the same.